I'm Mayor Rick Goldring, and welcome to Burlington Matters here on Cogeco's Your TV. Burlington Matters is a program that I host on a regular basis that gives us an opportunity to connect with the community and discuss with special guests issues and events that are occurring within the city of Burlington. Today we're going to be talking about crime, talking about safety in the city and in the region of Halton. I think most of us realize that we're very fortunate to live where we do, as we live in the safest regional municipality in the country, being Halton region, and that's obviously something we're all proud of. And today I'll be discussing that and a number of other topics with representatives of the Halton Regional Police Service. So welcome to the show. We have Chief Stephen Tanner. Chief, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And we have the traffic services supervisor for the region of Halton, or for the Halton Regional Police Service, and that is Sergeant Ryan Snow. So gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. So I opened the show talking about the fact that Halton Region is in fact the safest regional municipality in the country. And I believe it's the safest large urban municipality is actually the technical definition or technical measurement. Is that accurate?
That's right, and you know, that's something we all need and should be extremely proud of. Our citizens should be proud of that. We as police officers are very proud of that and trying to keep those crime rates down. So what that really is based on crime statistics and the number of crimes in our community per 100,000, we have a lower crime rate than almost any city or large urban area in all of Canada. There's another measurement which I think is extremely important, and that's the Crime Severity Index. And that's a calculation that the government did through Stats Canada a few years ago to put weights of how serious different crimes are. Because if a community had 10 crimes, but 5 of them were homicides, the other community had 10, but they were all thefts. Obviously, one community was arguably safer. So on that measurement, we are the safest large municipality in all of Canada.
On the Crime Severity Index.
Right, and we have been that safest community for going on 10 years.
What makes it so?
You know, we are a creature of our demographics to some extent. We have great citizens here, no doubt about it. We have good school systems, we have good economies, we have high employment rates, low unemployment rates, and sometimes poverty is certainly a driver of crime. Not to say there are not many individuals within Halton region who are at or below that poverty level, and people that are in need of different assistance. But by and large, we're much better off that way from a socioeconomic perspective. That helps to drive crime down. And in fact, something that I notice quite often in a number of our more serious crimes, if we look at our armed robberies, bank robberies, types of situations, they're often criminals coming from regional municipalities either to the east or west of us, as opposed to being people who live here.
Sounds like a case for a wall. I'm just kidding.
We'll only let someone else do that. We don't want to shut down the government.
So what types of crimes do we see in Burlington and Halton region? What are the common types of crimes where your officers focus on?
Break and enters are always a concern, especially residential or commercial, but I think when someone has their home broken into, that's particularly upsetting to the homeowner and to us. Those crimes, if we have 1 or 2 of them, it's too many. We do have hundreds of break and enters across the region of Halton in a large population. So they certainly concern us. Thefts are up. Thefts have probably close to doubled last year over the year before, which is concerning. And some of those are shoplifting types of things, so they're not all, major thefts from, businesses. Some of them are very minor in nature, but they're still technically thefts, so they all count statistically. Impaired driving, certainly when we, and Ryan will talk a lot about our road safety initiatives, impaired driving is always a concern here, whether it's impaired by drugs or by alcohol, or both. Robbery is one of the things we've noticed with our robbery situation. Our robbery really is a theft with some violence or threat. Unfortunately, a lot of those in recent years have become youth on youth. In parks or outside of schools, and they're often referred to as punk-off types of robberies, but they're cell phones and someone has their iPhone stolen or their BlackBerry and that type of thing. So they're classified as a robbery just as a jewelry store or a bank robbery would be. But they're certainly concerning to us, and again, some of that is driven by the technology that all of our youth tend to have these days.
I sense that in the region of Halton, with the Halton Regional Police Service, there is a significant amount of outreach. Well, in fact, I know that. There's a significant amount of outreach in the community. How much of a factor do you think that is in the planned activities that your force has in connecting with residents in all sorts of different circumstances?
Yeah,
Can you comment on that?
I think our network and the ability for us to reach out to our citizens, or for our citizens to reach out to us, is second to none. We've started that many years ago, and I was a policeman here, 35 years in total, but I started here in Burlington in 1982. And we did a combination of reactive and proactive preventative type of policing. We've really taken that to an all new level now with community safety and well-being plans, along with the region of Halton, medical officer health, our local health integrated health networks, drug and alcohol programs, because we can look at a situation or an individual that we're dealing with from a policing perspective, because we tend to be the 24/7, everyone can call us and we'll go and help. Whether it's counseling, whether it's drug addiction, whether it's domestic violence types of situations, poverty, we may be the first ones there, but we might not be the best position or the best positioned organization long term to deal with that situation and make it better. And that's where we can bring in all of our partners through situation tables and talk about situations, and the right organizations take ownership of the issue and help us to solve them. If we can put a person who is, in that perhaps poverty, housing issues, drug and alcohol addiction sorts of situations into a better place with proper counseling, we're not going to go back there as a police agency, and then we can move on to another issue. And as we solve more of those issues, we hope to further drive crime down.
Sergeant Snow, traffic services is your domain. That's pretty broad.
Certainly is.
Where do you focus on?
Well, we focus on a number of portfolios. We take care of collision reconstruction, which is for some of the more severe collisions that occur in the region that generally result in death or life-altering injury. We also take care of the commercial motor vehicle enforcement program, speed monitoring and alcohol detection, and we also deal with the tow contracts for the entire region that a lot of our community members obviously will come into some sort of contact with at some point.
I'm sorry, you deal with the tow contract?
That's correct, yeah.
So what do you mean by that?
Well, there's tow contracts both for when somebody breaks down on the side of the road and they call police and say, I need a tow truck. So our rotational towing agreement, which is with a lot of the area tow companies, ensures that when a tow driver comes to assist you, that that person has passed a security clearance, and that the tools on board the truck are appropriate and that the truck is safe, and that generally that's somebody who's going to come and help you, that if it were my wife that was broken down on the side of the road, I'd feel comfortable with coming to assist.
And those are all local and regional roads?
That's correct.
And it's not on our 400 series highways?
No, that's correct. The 400 series highways, along with the QEW or OPP jurisdiction, and they have their own policies and procedures in regards to tows. The other part of our towing program, though, is our secure contract. And what that is so if you're involved in a collision and you're not in a position to tell us what you'd like done with your vehicle, then what we do is we essentially seize the vehicle and we actually have it taken to a secure storage facility until such time as either the registered owner of the vehicle or the insurance company that has jurisdiction over that vehicle tells us what they'd like done with it.
So one of the things that I hear, and I know members of council probably in all of the municipalities across Halton here, is speeding. On local streets, speeding in neighborhoods, people are complaining. I know that the Halton Regional Police Service works with the transportation departments in all the local municipalities with regard to trying to slow down traffic and vertical deflections or speed bumps and so on and so forth. How big an issue is that for the department?
You know what, if every year it's always one of our top priorities. I mean, traffic safety is the #1 priority of Halton residents, and traffic safety is one of our pillars of our community safety and well-being plan. And that's basically our philosophy about how we approach these sorts of things. So while we have our enforcement resources out on the front line that are conducting radar, they're looking for impaired drivers, there's also that collaboration with the community piece, which I'm especially a fan of, where we do a lot of proactive outreach, a lot of social development. We educate various groups within the community, whether or not we're talking about high school age children, whether or not we're talking about commercial motor vehicle owners and operators, and we talk about the sorts of things that they can proactively do to both protect themselves and at the same time keep our entire community safe. So it will always be, in my opinion, will always be the #1 priority of Halton Police when it comes to supporting our community, because traffic safety is that one area that can truly impact just about every road user user. I mean, every day you go out, you always run the risk of potentially getting involved in a collision that may not be your fault. So that's why it's important to be able to take the time and educate road users about how to ensure that they arrive where they're going safely.
How do you determine the areas to focus on with regard to enforcement?
Well, it's based on a number of factors. We can look at everything from complaints from the community, which quite often come to us through our Road Watch program. The Road Watch program, be it in the city of Burlington or in any of the other municipalities in the region, all of our residents are encouraged that if you see something that's of a concern, say for instance you live in a subdivision and there's cars that perhaps are speeding in areas where kids are out playing, you can actually go onto the Halton Police website. You can click on services in the top toolbar across the top of the screen, go into services and select the Road Watch option, and you can actually make a complaint about what it is that you're observing.
Through the Halton Regional Police Service website.
That's correct.
You can,
yep, haltonpolice.ca.
haltonpolice.ca.
Yep.
You're connected a lot. I know that recently there was an elderly lady with dementia that disappeared in the Aldershot area, and I know that was obviously a big priority, especially because of the weather.
Absolutely.
It would be a big priority anytime, but the weather I think accentuated it with the cold weather we had. What role does social media play in reaching out to the community?
Well, social media now has become huge for us, as it has for all of our city partners, and when that type of situation happens, time is of the essence, and we have to get to that person as quickly as we can, particularly in freezing cold weather, although hot temperatures in the summer are very dangerous as well. We were able to reach out through social media, through Twitter and other platforms, to reach a wide number of people now. Many of us have our own Halton Regional Police Service accounts with 10 or 12,000 followers, so we can send those messages out, and they're magnified by how many times they're repeated over and over. One of the situations that gave rise to the successful conclusion in that sort of situation was CN Rail were also notified, so their trains are coming through Burlington and Oakville at different times, and they actually observed the lady in a certain location at about the time our K9 unit and other officers were tracking the individual and getting very close to rescuing her. So it was very much a team effort. We're going to recommend the CN rail teams for their role in that, for their sorts of recognition as well. It's fabulous.
But you obviously can't do the job. We can't be the safest region without the tremendous involvement of the public and working with the Halton Regional Police Service. You can't.
Absolutely. We would not be in the position we're in. We would not save lives the way that we're able to without that tremendous networking with our citizens.
Excellent. If you just tuned in, you're watching Burlington Matters. I'm Mayor Rick Goldring. We're discussing safety and issues related to the Halton Regional Police Service with Sergeant Ryan Snow and Chief Stephen Tanner. And we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back here on your TV. Welcome back to Burlington Matters here on your TV. I'm Mayor Rick Goldring, discussing issues that involve the police and helping us be the safest regional municipality in all of the country. And that's with Chief Stephen Tanner and Sergeant Ryan Snow of the Halton Regional Police Service. Chief, at the break we talked about social media and how much the community assisted with regard to when a lady in Aldershot disappeared with the cold weather, and how that was really a community effort went into that to try and locate her. But over the last, 18 months, you've introduced Operation Lifesaver, which relates to what we just talked about.
That's right. And my father actually passed away a number of years ago, but had Alzheimer's. And when you're dealing with that situation from a family perspective, Operation Lifesaver gives families an opportunity to have a device put onto their loved one, their elderly parent, or an autistic child in some cases. So when they leave their residence or when they become missing, we can track them very quickly through the technology that we have through our search and rescue capabilities here in Halton. Time is of the essence, and if we can locate somebody within the first 10 or 15 minutes or half an hour, as opposed to hours in freezing cold, and some of these individuals will travel a long way on foot, so the search area that we need to cover becomes exponentially larger as time goes by. So I would encourage anyone with a loved one in that sort of situation to, again, visit our website, visit the Operation Lifesaver sort of information that we have there, and look at that as an alternative solution for yourselves.
Sergeant Snow, speaking about the community getting involved, you told me before we went on air that about 1/3 of the impaired driving arrests that take place in the region are as a result of phone calls of people who have observed inappropriate behavior or concerning behavior behind the wheel of a car. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I certainly can. One of the great things we pride ourselves on is that relationship we have with the community here in Halton. And quite a while ago, we started introducing the idea that if you see somebody that's operating a vehicle and you believe they're impaired or otherwise you're just not following the traffic laws, what you're seeing could potentially be a crime in progress, and that the appropriate thing to do is to call 911. So in 2017, 1/3 or 165 of our impaired driving arrests actually started out with a call from a member of the community. So that's a really great metric for us, to be able to show that, when you have that sort of relationship with the community and, motorists are motivated to be a part of that solution in order to increase traffic safety, what we're doing is we're making our roadways safer for everyone.
So over 500 impaired driving charges last year approximately?
Yeah, 536 actually in total.
And you look at the population of Halton being about 536,000 people in that range, it's about one charge per 1,000 people.
That's right.
Is that a high rate?
You know what, it's hard to say whether or not it's a high rate, but I think anytime you're dealing with those sorts of numbers, there's always room for improvement. And getting out that message about if you drink, don't drive, and to be able to, make some good choices around, the decisions that you make in regards to consumption, be it drugs and or alcohol, you can't really underscore the importance of doing that. When it comes to a lot of our effort, our December Ride program, for instance, 1 in 5 persons that we interacted with and conducted an impairment investigation, 1 in 5 were either charged or faced some form of a license suspension. So that means 20% of the time, or 1 in 5 motorists that we dealt with faced some sort of enforcement as a result of that interaction.
So the bottom line is impaired driving is still an issue in 2018. It is still an issue. Do you have a comment, or can you provide some perspective as to the demographics of people that are charged with impaired driving? Because there's a perception with some that the younger people get it.
Absolutely.
The younger people get it, but it is an older demographic that doesn't get it as much.
Yeah, it's an interesting to note that there's a lot of assumptions out there about what your typical member of the public who is charged with an impaired driving offense looks like. And it's interesting to note that really impaired driving does not discriminate. It doesn't matter what part of the community you're from, what your background is. Bottom line is we arrest persons of all ages and different backgrounds with impaired driving offenses. Impaired driving is one of those things that there's lots of reasons that it occurs, whether or not you're talking about substance abuse, which generally that is part of the problem, whether it's bad judgment. There are a lot of people out there that just say, I don't want to leave my car in a parking lot and come back the next day, that would rather risk themselves and putting other road users at risk by driving home while impaired. So it is definitely a matter of judgment, and that's why I encourage all people, before you start going down the road of impairment, think about what your plan is before you actually go on out and do the things that all of us do on weekends, which is, how am I going to get home at the end of this?
So recently you've made a decision to publicize the name, or make public the names of people that are charged, where I understand in the past you didn't do that. And what's your rationale behind changing that?
That's, I think the rationale has a lot to do with increased accountability. Impaired driving is an offense which has the potential to, again, victimize a lot of road users, a lot of members of our society. And in saying that, it is becoming more of a consistent application you're seeing across police services, both Ontario and Canada-wide and beyond, to list the names of persons charged with impaired offenses. I'd note that when we talk about the idea of a criminal offense, when you're actually charged before the court, that information is a matter of public record, and that anyone who felt the need to go to the court could actually obtain that information on their own. So us releasing that information is just consistent with our policies, and that we release the names of all persons that are charged with criminal offenses.
Speaking of impaired driving, on July the 1st, the legislation will be introduced in Canada, or be enacted, or be implemented, that we'll see the LCBO equivalent for cannabis. And so that's another challenge from impairment for you to deal with. Not that you don't have to deal with it now. How will the Halton Regional Police Service and other police services across the country deal with the fact that people will be able to smoke recreational marijuana legally?
Well, you know, there are certainly a number of people who will put forward the argument that marijuana has been around for a long, long time,
Right.
and there's been people smoking it, and we have people who have been impaired by marijuana for years. And we have to look to field sobriety types of testing and drug recognition experts and very expensive and costly training that comes along with that to be able to address the issues or the potential for increased issues around marijuana use post July 1st, depending what the Senate does. So we're anticipating those changes. We're anticipating a couple of dispensaries, I believe one in Oakville and one in Burlington at this point. There's also going to be, we will be a part of a joint force type of ongoing operation in and around the dispensaries to make sure the dispensaries are
Dispensaries are they're really retail stores.
right, that's right. Around legal dispensaries and other things that are going to also pop up after July 1st. One of my concerns is for road safety. We will always have that concern, and as Sergeant Snow mentioned, that is always one of our most often heard priorities for the public that we serve and for citizens when we do large-scale surveys. But we need to look at that road safety component. And there will still be organized crime involvement in marijuana production and sale, and organized crime involvement in a variety of aspects in and around that. So that part of marijuana and the issues with marijuana is not going to go away. Some of that comes down to costing issues and supply and demand and economics, but we still anticipate issues on the organized crime side as well.
So Chief, you use the terminology of dispensary. And I do know that there are some people that have seen an opportunity in the marketplace to provide a medical marijuana dispensary. And what is, my understanding is the only way you can get medical marijuana is through the mail. And now, but these dispensaries have popped up in different communities. Can you comment on the legality of those and how we're dealing with that?
Yeah, there are certainly, and certainly the ones that are more highly publicized have been in and around Toronto, Kensington Market area, and other parts of the city. And Toronto Police have continued to take enforcement action and execute search warrants and make arrests in some of those cases. We would do the same here. It's going to be, it's similar to some other types of endeavors, I suppose. I often draw a bit of a parallel with casinos and gambling and gaming. I mean, gaming has been illegal for many years. It's okay if you do it in a casino. Dispensaries are there, and one of the main reasons, or one of the safeguards around dispensaries, will be that the marijuana that will be sold there should be very highly regulated, and people should know the content, the strength of those different types of drugs. Where with street drugs, they may be laced with fentanyl, they may be laced with cocaine or methamphetamine, and you really don't know. There's other risks to buying drugs off the street. Fentanyl has become a particular concern across Canada, more in the western provinces, but we have had deaths here. So if people are buying drugs off the street, you don't know what you're taking, and we're going to certainly be involved in those situations on an ongoing basis.
Switching back to Sergeant Snow, thanks for that, Chief. Distracted driving, still a huge issue. I mean, you've publicized some great programs to encourage people not to be distracted and not to use their, not to text on their cell phones.
Exactly.
How are your efforts going with regard to distracted driving?
Well, distracted driving is something that's not going to go away. The hope is that as technology continues to improve, that they're going to be able to find ways to be able to manage it better. But you know, a lot of people say to me, well, what really is distracted driving? And the appropriate way to put it is it's any one of three things. It's when you take your eyes off the road, you take your hands off the wheel, or you take your mind off of what you're doing. And if you are doing all three of those, you're even more distracted. And that's generally what happens when you're texting. So when you're texting, generally you're focused on your phone, you're focused on composing that message, and you're not focusing on the task at hand. From a collision reconstruction perspective, what that means is that you're slowing down your response time to be able to react to rapidly unfolding events on the roadway in front of you, which can make you up to 27 times more likely to be involved in a collision.
27 times more likely.
More likely.
That is significant.
It is. It is significant, and it's an area where, again, a lot of school-age children, very much kind of like the smoking movement of about 20 years ago, they're getting that message in school that it is definitely not something you should be doing. That need, I would say, probably more the 40 to 50-something crowd that has been driving for quite a while now. There is perhaps that, I need to see what that next message says. And what we're generally suggesting to people is install an app on your phone that essentially locks your phone out so that you can't text while you're driving, or basically put the phone somewhere else in the vehicle. One of the things I'd also note, though, the viewers may want to take note of, is that the Ministry of Transport through the government is going to be introducing some new regulations in the very immediate future, which if you're charged with distracted driving, if you subsequently plead guilty, so whether or not you just pay the ticket or you fight it in court and are found guilty before a court, you're also going to face a mandatory license suspension. And that license suspension, well, I don't know the period of what that suspension will be. The big concern is it will be on your driving abstract, and I can guarantee you insurance companies generally will find any reason to increase your rates. So that's something that, as you can see, as you move down the road, it will cost you a lot more than the price of a ticket.
What are the most common traffic violations you see on any given day in the region of Halton?
Yeah, it's always the same. It's always speeding and sign violations. Those are two of the more significant areas that we see, and both of those sorts of offenses do contribute to that elevated risk that we see as preventable. These sorts of behaviors are a choice, whether it's impaired driving, speeding, driving aggressively, all of those sorts of behaviors. Those are choices that people make, and that's part of the reason why, again, we kind of focus on more of a holistic approach. We continue our enforcement efforts, but that proactive outreach and education is equally important.
I believe it's the Ontario Provincial Police that releases every year common excuses for speeding.
Yes, that's right.
What are some of your favorite common excuses?
It's I need to go to the washroom. I'm late for my meeting that I have to go to. I would generally say that most of those excuses are what I refer to as they're selfish based. It's my needs are greater than that of the motoring public, and I always come back. Especially there are occasions on the road where it's necessary to remind motorists that in the Highway Traffic Act it actually says that driving is actually a privilege and not a right in the province of Ontario. While it wasn't specific to speeding, I actually had the occasion a couple years ago to stop and arrest a police officer from another jurisdiction for impaired driving. And his comment to me was, "You've ruined my life." And I subsequently responded to that person and I said, no, it's actually you who are happy is not going to ruin the life of somebody else who's on the roadway. And that individual was charged and subsequently convicted of impaired driving.
And what happened to him with his career?
Again, that would be more of an internal matter for the service that individual works for. However, generally that is going to slow down your career progression. It's going to slow down the chance of a promotion, which may be a financial or just a positional advance. So again, whether or not you're a police officer or whatever occupation you are, at the end of the day, impaired driving is a choice, and I'd encourage people to make better choices than they're making.
I want to say thank you very much to Chief Stephen Tanner. Thank you very much to Sergeant Ryan Snow for joining us today on Burlington Matters and talking about some of the challenges and opportunities and the great work that's happening at the Halton Regional Police Service. Thank you very much for tuning in to Burlington Matters. I'm Burlington Mayor Rick Goldring. We will see you next time on Cogeco's Your TV.